All right, let's talk about English Romanticism. And no, this isn't just about pretty poems about daffodils. This was a movement, a real rebellion that completely changed how we think about art, nature, and honestly, what it even means to be human.
So picture this. It's the turn of the 19th century, and there's this massive clash of ideas happening. In one corner, you've got reason. Think logic, order, industry, the whole Enlightenment package. But in the other corner, something wild and new is bubbling up. Imagination. This is all about emotion, nature, and spirit.
And that really gets to the heart of it, right? Which one is the greater power? This was the huge question a whole new generation of revolutionary poets were obsessed with answering. For them, the very soul of humanity was on the line. So yeah, let's get into it. Okay, so to really understand the Romantics, you gotta know what they were rebelling against. We need to look at the world they were living in, a world totally dominated by what we call oppressive rationality. This was the tail end of the Enlightenment, a time where everything was about logic, order, and reason. You know, with things like the French Revolution and the Industrial Revolution kicking into high gear, a lot of artists and thinkers started to feel, well, that just pure reason wasn't cutting it. It felt like something really important, something essential, was getting lost in the shuffle. They felt this worldview was just ignoring all the messy, emotional, wonderful parts of what makes us human. So who was the first major rebel to really challenge all this? That would be the one and only William Blake. And listen, he wasn't just some critic writing angry letters. The guy was a total visionary, a poet and an artist who was practically a prophet for a whole new way of seeing the world. See, Blake's whole thing was that the world isn't simple. It's not just black and white, good versus evil. He saw it as this incredible mystical mix of opposites and contradictions. And he believed the poet's real job, it wasn't to decide which side was right. No, it was to harmonize them, to find the beauty in that tension. And believe me, he was not quiet about it. You read something like The Marriage of Heaven and Hell, and you can just feel him raging against social injustice and the cold, mechanical logic of the industrial age. He wasn't just writing poetry. He was trying to spark a revolution of the soul. All right, so that's Blake, the trailblazer. But where does this rebellion go from here? Well, the next generation of Romantics took that fire and pointed it towards the natural world. And this is where a name you've probably heard before comes in, William Wordsworth. Now, Wordsworth came along with this idea that was, honestly, mind-blowing for the time. He said that nature isn't just a bunch of trees and mountains to look at. No, it's a living force. It's got a universal spirit that connects everything and everyone. It's a source of truth, of morality, a way to plug into something bigger than ourselves. Okay, so if nature is this living source of truth, how do you tap into it? What's the key? Well, Wordsworth's good friend Samuel Taylor Coleridge had the answer, and that answer was the human imagination. And we're not just talking about daydreaming here. For Coleridge, the poetic imagination was the ultimate creative power. It was this almost divine ability to look at the world, see all its pieces, and then reshape it into a higher, deeper truth. It's a real superpower. And it wasn't just these guys either. This movement was packed with brilliant people. You had William's sister, Dorothy Wordsworth, whose journals about nature were a huge influence. And of course, Mary Shelley, who gave us Frankenstein, a perfect romantic story about the dark side of pure reason. And then you have John Keats, Percy Bysshe Shelley, Lord Byron, the list goes on. Each one of them brought something new to the table. Which brings us to what you might call the climax of the movement, the next wave, the younger generation, with poets like Percy Bysshe Shelley and John Keats. These guys took all these ideas about nature and imagination and just cranked them up to 11, especially when it came to the role of the poet. I mean, listen to Shelley. In his defense of poetry, he doesn't just say imagination is as good as reason. Nope. He flat out says it's superior. He calls it the supreme power, the real engine for all that's good in the world. That is a bold claim. But okay, that's a big statement. So how does a poet actually do that? How do they wield this incredible power? It's a great question, and John Keats had a really fascinating answer, and it's not what you might think. He came up with this idea he called negative capability. And what that means is, for a poet to truly capture the essence of something, they have to be comfortable with uncertainty and doubt. They have to abstain from easy answers, get their own ego out of the way, and just become a channel for the truth of whatever they're writing about. Keats put it perfectly. He said the poet acts as a catalyst. Think about it like a chemical reaction.
The poet isn't the main substance. They're the ethereal chemicals that operate on everyone else, on the mass of neutral intellect, and cause a transformation. They change how we all see the world.
So when you lay it all out, you can see this amazing arc, can't you? It starts with Blake's mystical rebellion, this total rejection of the old ways. Then Wordsworth and Coleridge come in and define the core concepts of nature and imagination. And it all builds to this incredible climax with Shelley and Keats, who define the poet as the ultimate agent of change.
And that kind of leaves us with one big question, doesn't it? If the poet is a catalyst for change, what should they be changing today? Shelley called poets the unacknowledged legislators of the world. So if their job is to help us see and imagine a different reality, what reality do we need them to show us right now?